It does have great music. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and Vinnaithaandi Varuvaayaa is a 2010 Tamil language romantic drama that was written and directed by Gautham Menon. It tells the story of Karthik, played by Silambarasan, a young aspiring filmmaker who falls in love with Jessie, a Malayali Christian woman played by Trisha Krishnan. It is one of those love at first sight, boy meets girl stories and all the emotional turmoil that comes with that. And of course, there's a big obstacle. With Jessie being a Christian and Karthik a Hindu, her very conservative parents would never allow their relationship to move forward. And because of that, Jessie decides they can only be friends. And Karthik is of course still doing everything he can to show his love and win her over. Vinnaithaandi Varuvaayaa, which translates to Will You Cross the Skies for Me and is often referred to simply as VTV, was a big success when it came out and is regarded as kind of a modern romantic classic. It's very dear to many people's hearts and I certainly don't want to take anything away from that. But unfortunately, this one didn't really work for me that well. I liked it okay, but I also had some bigger issues with it that kept me from enjoying it more. On the plus side, it is able to evoke that feeling of first love and how it changes everything, how your whole world gets flipped upside down, how you can't think of anything else anymore, how you absolutely feel that you must be with that one special person in order to survive, and how much it destroys you if you can't. The film is told from the perspective of Karthik and it's easy to see how and why he falls in love with Jessie. Trisha Krishnan is beautiful and radiates this longing for something that's unreachable. A few years later she was also cast in the romantic drama 96, again as the person the protagonist never got over with. But I think VTV never backs it up enough. The love depicted in the film never exceeds that level of love at first sight. It is never really developed further. It doesn't get any deeper. At one point Jessie asks Karthik why he fell in love with her, and the question why her and not anyone else is brought up several times. But there's no real answer to it. And I understand that that's kind of the point and that people don't really choose who they are attracted to and with whom they fall in love with. But for me, the movie is too simplistic in this regard and too much satisfied with just the initial and honestly very shallow attraction. And hand in hand with this notion goes my perception of how much Karthik is treating Jessie just as the object of his desire. And his advances also range from innocent, premature expressions of love to almost stalker-like stuff as he just can't take no for an answer. Now the movie is more than 10 years old and a lot of things have changed in recent years. Our sensibilities of what's appropriate and what's not have changed. And at least for me, some things in VTV were simply too much. And paired with Karthik's rather aggressive frustration, it wasn't that easy to fully accept him as a likable protagonist. The movie kind of allows and justifies it with Jessie's change of heart, or her later admission that she too has feelings for Karthik. But I honestly never fully bought into that. This is of course very subjective and it surely seems that a lot of people love this movie, but I never felt the strongest chemistry between the two of them. But coming back to a positive. One thing VTV definitely has going for it is the wonderful music by A.R. There are several song and dance sequences sprinkled in throughout the film and they beautifully illustrate Karthik's emotional state of mind. There's a nice musical range to the songs and they are also quite catchy. My favorite one probably being Anbilavan. As so often, these sequences also takes us to kind of a dreamlike fantasy space or simply to other locations, other countries that work with the song's main emotion. The cinematography was done by Manoj Paramahamsa and just because of the sheer beauty of many of the locations, there's definitely a lot to cherish here when it comes to the visuals. But unfortunately, the storytelling, the direction and pacing, those elements aren't on par. First of all, VTV is almost 2 hours and 40 minutes long and you can really feel that length. Especially in the second half, it is dragging quite a bit and there's just very little story and progression for this amount of runtime. It is rather repetitive and once again I was wondering how a movie can be this long and at the same time tell me so little about its characters and their lives. I read several times how people praised it for its realistic story, and while it's probably realistic or grounded at its core, it nevertheless always feels so artificial and kind of sloppy to me. We barely get any characters besides Kartik and Jesse, and if so, their roles are absolutely minimal. I accept Kartik's dream of becoming a filmmaker, but his journey is so shallow. We see how he works as an assistant, but the struggle never becomes tangible at all, and in the end he's just able to make his first feature film, which is also so big already that it gets shot in the United States. There are some moments where this meta-movie element is woven into the narrative, and the song and dance numbers are certainly the biggest cinematic touch. But for me, it never felt organic or realistic. Rather like elements or ideas that sound interesting or intriguing on paper, but they don't really come alive. And by sloppy I mean how the overall story progresses, as well as how the scenes themselves unfold and move from one to the next. Sometimes this felt like a first draft to me. At one point Kartik is confronted with Jesse's brother, and only then we learn that Kartik is also a boxer, and we get this little fight scene. Later in the movie, after we have only heard Kartik's thoughts up until that point, we suddenly also hear Jesse's, which just feels strange as the movie was from Kartik's perspective and we never heard hers before. It's almost like a storytelling compromise to make the audience understand what's happening. Then there's also this very late development of someone else falling in love with Kartik, which felt so rushed and random to me. But with all of this being said, I still had a decent time with the movie, and the climactic moment in Central Park was really sweet and got to me. Like I said, the movie certainly carries that special feeling of being in love for the first time, and I also liked the very end, which is quite different from the Telugu version that was shot simultaneously and stars Naga Chaitanya and Samantha, with both of them appearing in this one as well, which adds to the film's movie-making meta-touch, even though I don't think it enriches the narrative that much, because Kartik's dream and struggle of becoming a filmmaker wasn't developed enough. So, in German I'd say, Vinnaithaandi Varuvaayaa hat einen tollen Soundtrack von A.R. Rahman und zuweilen gelingt es ihm auch, den Herzschmerz der ersten Liebe rüberzubringen. Insgesamt bleibt er für meinen Geschmack aber auch einfach zu oberflächlich und die ausufernde Länge tut ihm auch nicht gut. I give VTV 6 out of 10. It's more like 5.8, but I don't do that. Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about VTV. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd, and also on Patreon simply at the Jimmy Cage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.